The morning sun cast long shadows across Windsor Castle as Princess Charlotte walked through the grand hallway with her usual bright smile. At 9 years old, she carried herself with the grace expected of royalty, yet maintained the innocent charm that made her beloved by the public. Her small footsteps echoed softly on the marble floor as she made her way to the morning room where the family traditionally gathered for breakfast. Charlotte had always been close to her great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, and even after her passing, she felt a special connection to the royal traditions. She understood her place in the line of succession and took her responsibilities seriously, despite her young age. Her parents, Prince William and Catherine, had taught her the importance of respect, duty, and kindness toward everyone in the royal household. On this particular morning, Charlotte was especially excited because she had prepared a small presentation about British history for the family gathering. She had worked hard on it with her tutors, researching the stories of previous queens and princesses who had served their country with honor. The young princess believed that sharing knowledge and showing respect for their heritage was important. As she approached the morning room, she could hear voices inside. Queen Camilla was already there, speaking with several members of the household staff. Charlotte paused for a moment, smoothing her dress and checking her appearance in the hallway mirror. She wanted to make a good impression and show the proper respect due to her step-grandmother. The royal guards stationed throughout the castle had always been fond of Princess Charlotte. They had watched her grow from a tiny toddler into a thoughtful young girl who never failed to greet them politely. Sergeant James Morrison, who had served the royal family for over 15 years, was particularly protective of the young princess. He had seen many changes in the royal household over the years, but Charlotte's genuine warmth and respect for others had always stood out. Standing at his post near the morning room, Sergeant Morrison noticed Charlotte's approach. He gave her a subtle nod of acknowledgement, which she returned with a gentle smile. The princess had always been taught to recognize and appreciate the service of those who protected her family. This mutual respect had created a bond between Charlotte and many of the castle's staff members. The atmosphere in the castle that morning seemed peaceful enough, but those who had worked there long enough knew that tensions sometimes arose within the royal family. Different personalities and approaches to royal duties could sometimes clash, especially when it came to the younger generation and their place in the monarchy's future. Charlotte took a deep breath and gently knocked on the morning room door before entering. The room fell silent as she stepped inside, her small figure outlined against the doorframe. She curtsied politely to Queen Camilla, as she had been taught to do, and spoke in her clear, well-mannered voice. "Good morning, Your Majesty. I hope you are well today," Charlotte said, maintaining the formal tone appropriate for addressing the queen consort. Her eyes sparkled with the excitement of sharing her historical presentation, and she clutched her small notebook containing her research. However, instead of receiving the warm welcome she expected, Charlotte was met with an unexpected response that would change the dynamic of that morning entirely. The innocent enthusiasm in her eyes began to flicker as she realized something was wrong. Outside the room, Sergeant Morrison remained at his post, but his trained ears had caught the change in tone coming from within. Years of experience had taught him to recognize when situations were developing that might require his attention. The slight tension in his shoulders showed that his protective instincts were beginning to activate. The morning that had started with such promise for young Princess Charlotte was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would test not only her resilience, but also reveal the true character of those around her. The castle walls, which had witnessed centuries of royal drama, were about to add another chapter to their long history of protecting the innocent and upholding justice. Queen Camilla looked up from her conversation with the staff members, her expression showing clear annoyance at the interruption. Instead of acknowledging Charlotte's polite greeting with the warmth typically expected in royal family interactions, her response was sharp and dismissive. "Charlotte, I'm in the middle of important discussions about household matters. These are adult conversations that don't concern children," Camilla said coldly, not even returning the curtsy or acknowledging the respect the young princess had shown. "Perhaps you should find something more appropriate to do with your time instead of interrupting grown-ups." The harsh tone caught everyone in the room off guard. The staff members exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly unsure how to react to this breach of royal protocol. In the royal household, even informal family moments typically maintained certain standards of courtesy, especially when addressing children who held significant positions in the line of succession. Charlotte's face flushed with embarrassment and confusion. She had never been spoken to so dismissively by a family member, especially not in front of staff. Her small hands trembled slightly as she clutched her notebook tighter, the historical presentation she had worked so hard on suddenly feeling worthless and unwelcome. "I apologize if I disturbed you." "Your Majesty," Charlotte managed to say, her voice smaller now but still maintaining the politeness instilled in her by her parents. "I had prepared something about our family's history that I thought might interest everyone." Camilla's response was even more cutting than before. "History lessons are for the schoolroom, not for bothering busy adults. I suggest you learn the difference between appropriate and inappropriate behavior. Running around the castle interrupting important meetings is not befitting of someone in your position." The words stung deeply, especially because Charlotte had always been praised for her genuine interest in royal history and her respectful behavior toward family and staff alike. She felt tears beginning to form in her eyes, but she fought to hold them back, not wanting to show weakness in front of others. Outside the morning room, Sergeant Morrison's jaw tightened as he heard every word through the partially open door. In his 15 years of service, he had never witnessed such a public humiliation of any royal family member, particularly not a child who had done nothing wrong. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and he felt a surge of protective anger on behalf of the young princess. The other household staff in the room looked deeply uncomfortable with the situation unfolding before them. They had all grown fond of Princess Charlotte over the years, appreciating her genuine kindness and natural curiosity. Watching her being treated so harshly felt wrong to everyone present, but their positions prevented them from speaking out. Charlotte tried once more to salvage the situation, her young mind struggling to understand what she had done wrong. "I only wanted to share what I learned about Queen Victoria and how she served the people. I thought it might be interesting to discuss how we can follow her example." "Enough," Camilla snapped, her voice rising. "I don't have time for a child's amateur attempts at playing historian. If you want to be useful, learn to recognize when your presence is unwanted and unwelcome. Now please leave us to conduct actual important business." The final blow came when Camilla turned her back on Charlotte entirely, dismissing her as if she were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. The gesture was particularly painful because it showed complete disregard for Charlotte's royal status and her position as a future senior member of the monarchy. Charlotte stood frozen for a moment, the full impact of the humiliation washing over her. Her bottom lip quivered, and despite her best efforts, a single tear rolled down her cheek. She curtsied one final time, maintaining her dignity even in the face of such treatment, and quietly left the room. As she walked past Sergeant Morrison, he could see the hurt and confusion in her young eyes. The sight of the normally bright and confident princess looking so dejected stirred something fierce in his chest. He had sworn an oath to protect the royal family, and in his mind, that protection extended beyond physical threats to include preserving their dignity and honor. The sergeant watched Charlotte disappear down the hallway, her small shoulders slightly hunched with the weight of embarrassment. In that moment, he made a decision that would have significant consequences for everyone involved. Some lines he realized should never be crossed, especially when it came to mistreating innocent children who represented the future of the monarchy. Sergeant Morrison remained at his post for several more minutes, listening to Queen Camilla continue her conversation with the staff, as if nothing significant had happened. Her casual dismissal of what had just occurred made his blood boil even more. In his experience, true leadership involved lifting others up, especially the young and vulnerable, not crushing their spirits for no apparent reason. The sergeant had served under Queen Elizabeth for many years, and had witnessed firsthand how she treated every member of her family with dignity and respect. Even during difficult moments or necessary discipline, there was always an underlying foundation of love and protection for the family unit. What he had just witnessed felt like a complete betrayal of those values. As the morning progressed, word of the incident began to spread quietly among the household staff. The royal residence operated like a small community, and news traveled quickly through the network of maids, butlers, gardeners, and security personnel. Each person who heard about Charlotte's treatment expressed shock and concern. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the head housekeeper who had worked at the castle for over 20 years, was particularly disturbed when she heard what had happened. She had watched Charlotte grow up and had always been impressed by the young princess's genuine kindness toward the staff. Charlotte was one of the few royal children who consistently remembered to say please and thank you, who asked about staff members' families, and who showed real interest in learning about the people who served her household. "It's just not right," Mrs. Hayes whispered to her assistant while they prepared the afternoon tea service. "That little girl has more grace and dignity in her pinky finger than some adults I could mention. She didn't deserve to be spoken to like that, especially not in front of others." The castle's chef, Pierre Dubois, who had been working in the royal kitchens for 8 years, was equally upset. Charlotte had always been his favorite among the young royals because she appreciated good food and often complimented the meals he prepared. She even asked him to teach her simple recipes, showing genuine interest in learning life skills despite her privileged position. "Princess Charlotte, she has the heart of an angel," Pierre said to his kitchen staff. "Never once has she been demanding or rude. She always says please and thank you, and asks how my family is doing. For someone to treat her with such disrespect, it breaks my heart." Meanwhile, Charlotte had retreated to her favorite quiet spot in the castle library. She sat curled up in a window seat, looking out at the gardens while clutching her history notebook. The excitement she had felt about sharing her research had completely evaporated, replaced by confusion and hurt that she struggled to understand. She replayed the morning's events in her mind, trying to figure out what she had done wrong. Had she been too eager? Too interrupting? She had been taught that showing interest in family history and royal duties was important. So why had her enthusiasm been met with such harsh criticism? Sergeant Morrison found himself walking past the library several times during his patrol, checking on the young princess without making his concern obvious. Each time he saw her sitting there looking so small and sad, his resolve to take action grew stronger. He had seen enough injustice in his military career before joining the Royal Protection Service, and he wasn't about to stand by and watch it happen within the walls he was sworn to protect. During his lunch break, Morrison sought out several of his fellow guards to discuss what he had witnessed. These were men and women who had dedicated their lives to serving the crown and protecting the royal family. They took their duties seriously and understood that their role extended beyond merely standing guard. "I've been thinking about what happened this morning," Morrison said quietly to his trusted colleagues. "We all heard what went on in that room, and we all know it wasn't right. That little girl deserves better than to be humiliated like that." Corporal Sarah Jenkins, who had been with the Royal Protection Service for 7 years, nodded in agreement. "Princess Charlotte has always been respectful to all of us. She remembers our names, asks about our well-being, and treats us like human beings rather than invisible servants. She's going to be an important part of this monarchy's future." The guards discussed the delicate nature of their position. They were sworn to protect the royal family, but they also understood that sometimes protection meant standing up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. They had all taken oaths to serve the crown with honor and dignity, and watching a future queen be treated poorly went against everything they believed in. As the afternoon wore on, Morrison made a decision that would require considerable courage. He knew that speaking up could potentially cost him his career, but his conscience wouldn't allow him to remain silent. Some principles, he believed, were worth more than job security, especially when it came to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. That evening, as the castle settled into its dinner routine, Sergeant Morrison made his way to the private quarters where Queen Camilla typically spent her time before the evening meal. He had spent hours considering his approach, knowing that confronting a member of the royal family required extreme care and respect, even when addressing wrongdoing. He found Camilla in her sitting room, reviewing correspondence with her private secretary. Morrison knocked respectfully and waited for permission to enter. When granted access, he stepped inside, maintaining his professional bearing while feeling the weight of what he was about to do. "Your Majesty," he began, his voice steady and respectful but firm, "I apologize for the interruption, but I need to speak with you about an incident that occurred this morning involving Princess Charlotte." Camilla looked up from her papers with obvious irritation. "Sergeant Morrison, I'm quite busy with important matters. Whatever minor issue you're concerned about can surely wait until a more appropriate time." "With respect, Your Majesty, I don't believe this is a minor issue," Morrison replied, standing straighter. "I witnessed the interaction between you and Princess Charlotte in the morning room, and I feel compelled to address what I observed." The private secretary looked uncomfortable, and began to gather her papers. Sensing the tension in the room, Camilla waved her away dismissively, clearly annoyed that her evening was being interrupted by what she considered staff overstepping their boundaries. "I'm not sure what you think you witnessed, Sergeant, but my interactions with family members are not subject to review by the security staff," Camilla said coldly. "I suggest you remember your place and your duties." Morrison had anticipated this response, but he pressed forward. "Your Majesty, my duty is to protect all members of the royal family, and that includes protecting their dignity and well-being. Princess Charlotte approached you this morning with nothing but respect and enthusiasm to share her knowledge of royal history. She was treated in a manner that was frankly inappropriate for any child, let alone a future senior member of the monarchy." The room fell silent except for the ticking of an ornate clock on the mantelpiece. Camilla's face flushed with anger at being challenged by someone she considered beneath her station. She stood up from her desk, her voice rising with indignation. "How dare you question my judgment or my behavior toward family members?" she snapped. "You are a guard, nothing more. Your opinion on family matters is neither requested nor welcome." "You're absolutely right that I'm a guard," Morrison replied calmly, not backing down despite the Queen's anger. "But I'm a guard who has served this royal family with honor for 15 years. I've seen how true royalty behaves, and I've learned that greatness comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down." He paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Princess Charlotte is 9 years old. She's intelligent, kind, and genuinely interested in serving her future role with honor. This morning, she came to you with excitement about learning, and she was humiliated in front of staff members who have watched her grow up. That kind of treatment doesn't strengthen the monarchy, it damages it." Camilla's face grew even redder with rage. "You have absolutely no right to lecture me about the monarchy or about how to handle family relationships. I will not be spoken to this way by hired help." "I'm not trying to lecture you, Your Majesty," Morrison said, maintaining his respectful tone despite her hostility. "I'm trying to protect what this institution represents. I served in the military before joining the Royal Protection Service, and I learned that true leadership means setting an example that others want to follow. What happened this morning wasn't leadership, it was bullying." The word bullying hung in the air like a physical blow. Camilla took a step back, clearly shocked that anyone would use such a term to describe her behavior. Her anger shifted from hot rage to cold fury as she realized the implications of what the sergeant was saying. "You're walking a very dangerous line, Sergeant Morrison," she said in a low, threatening voice. "I could have you dismissed from service immediately for this insubordination." Morrison nodded slowly, understanding the risk he was taking. "Yes, Your Majesty, you could. But before you do, I want you to know that I'm not the only one who witnessed what happened this morning. The household staff were deeply disturbed by what they saw, and they're talking about it among themselves. Word has a way of spreading beyond these walls. The implication was clear. If the story of Charlotte's mistreatment became public knowledge, it could seriously damage Camilla's reputation and standing with the British people, who had always shown tremendous affection for the young princess." "Are you threatening me?" Camilla asked, her voice deadly quiet. "No, Your Majesty," Morrison replied firmly. "I'm simply stating facts. I'm hoping that you'll consider apologizing to Princess Charlotte and perhaps reflect on how family members should treat each other, especially when staff and others are watching." The two stood facing each other in the elegant sitting room, the weight of the confrontation settling between them like an unbreachable divide. The silence that followed Morrison's words stretched uncomfortably long. Camilla's face cycled through various emotions: anger, shock, and what might have been a flicker of recognition that perhaps she had gone too far. She walked to the window, looking out at the castle grounds where the last rays of sunlight painted everything in golden hues. "You have no idea what it's like," she finally said, her voice quieter but still tense. "Coming into this family, trying to find your place while everyone compares you to those who came before. Every move is scrutinized, every word is analyzed. Sometimes the pressure becomes overwhelming." Morrison remained respectfully silent, sensing that something important was happening in this moment. He had not expected vulnerability from someone who had just shown such harshness toward a child. "But that doesn't excuse what I did this morning," Camilla continued, turning back to face the sergeant. "Charlotte is an innocent child who was only trying to share something she found exciting. She didn't deserve to bear the brunt of my frustrations." The admission surprised Morrison, who had prepared for a much longer battle. He could see genuine regret beginning to replace the anger in her expression, and he felt a small spark of hope that this situation might be resolved with dignity and tact for everyone involved. "Your Majesty," he said gently, "we all have moments when the pressure gets to us. What matters is how we handle the situation afterward. Princess Charlotte is young enough that a sincere apology and explanation could easily repair any damage done." Camilla nodded slowly, running her hands through her hair in a gesture that made her seem more human and less imposing. She was so excited about her historical research, wasn't she? I could see it in her eyes when she walked in. And I crushed that enthusiasm completely. "Children are remarkably forgiving, Your Majesty," Morrison offered. "I've seen Princess Charlotte show kindness and understanding far beyond her years. If you approach her with sincerity, I believe she'll respond with the grace she's been taught." Meanwhile, in another part of the castle, Princess Charlotte sat with her parents, Prince William and Catherine, during their private dinner. She had been quieter than usual throughout the meal, picking at her food and responding to questions with shorter answers than normal. Catherine, with a mother's intuition, noticed the change in her daughter's demeanor immediately. "Charlotte, sweetheart, you seem a bit subdued tonight. Did something happen today?" Charlotte looked up at her mother, debating whether to share what had occurred. She had been taught not to complain or speak negatively about family members, but the hurt from the morning's incident was still fresh in her young heart. "I tried to share my history presentation with Queen Camilla this morning," she said quietly, "but she said I was interrupting and that children shouldn't bother adults with unimportant things." William and Catherine exchanged glances, both immediately recognizing that their daughter was deeply hurt by whatever had transpired. They knew Charlotte well enough to understand that she wouldn't have been inappropriate or disrespectful in her approach. "Tell us exactly what happened, darling," William said gently, setting down his fork and giving Charlotte his full attention. "Don't worry about being polite or protecting anyone's feelings. We need to understand the situation." Charlotte recounted the morning's events in her careful, precise way, explaining how she had prepared her presentation, how she had greeted Camilla respectfully, and how she had been dismissed so harshly in front of the household staff. As she spoke, her parents could see the pain and confusion in her eyes. "I keep wondering what I did wrong," Charlotte concluded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Was I too excited? Did I interrupt something more important? I thought sharing our family's history was something good to do." Catherine reached over and took her daughter's hand. "You did absolutely nothing wrong, Charlotte. Sharing knowledge and showing enthusiasm for your royal heritage is exactly what you should be doing. What happened to you this morning was not acceptable." William's jaw tightened with controlled anger. As someone who had experienced his own share of family difficulties and media scrutiny, he was fiercely protective of his children's emotional well-being. The idea that Charlotte had been humiliated and made to feel worthless for showing genuine interest in her future role infuriated him. "We'll be addressing this situation immediately," William said firmly. "No one, family member or otherwise, has the right to treat you that way, especially not for doing something positive and educational." Charlotte looked relieved to know that her parents supported her, but she also seemed worried about causing family conflict. "I don't want to make trouble for anyone. Maybe I really was being bothersome." "Charlotte," Catherine said firmly but lovingly, "you are never bothersome for being curious, eager to learn, or excited to share knowledge. Those are wonderful qualities that will serve you well in your future role. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." As the family continued their conversation, a soft knock came at their private dining room door. A staff member entered discreetly to inform them that Sergeant Morrison requested a brief audience, saying it concerned Princess Charlotte's well-being. William immediately granted permission for Sergeant Morrison to join them, curious about what the veteran guard needed to discuss regarding Charlotte. Morrison entered the private dining room with his usual professional bearing, but both William and Catherine could sense an underlying tension in his demeanor. "Your Royal Highnesses," Morrison began with a respectful bow, "I apologize for interrupting your family time, but I felt it was important to speak with you about an incident I witnessed this morning, involving Princess Charlotte." Charlotte looked up with surprise, not expecting that anyone from the security staff would want to discuss her difficult morning. Morrison gave her a gentle, reassuring smile before continuing. "I was stationed outside the morning room when Princess Charlotte approached Queen Camilla to share what appeared to be a historical presentation," Morrison explained carefully. What I witnessed was deeply concerning to me, both as a member of the Royal Protection Service and as someone who has great respect for Princess Charlotte. William leaned forward, his expression serious. Please continue, Sergeant Morrison. We want to hear your account of what happened. Morrison took a breath and recounted the events he had witnessed, describing Camilla's harsh dismissal of Charlotte, the humiliation inflicted in front of staff members, and the young princess's gracious response despite being treated so poorly. His account was factual and respectful, but it was clear that he had been profoundly disturbed by what he observed. I want you to know, Morrison continued, looking directly at Charlotte, that you conducted yourself with dignity and grace throughout the entire situation. Your approach was respectful, your enthusiasm was appropriate, and your response to unfair treatment showed remarkable maturity. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief and validation rather than hurt and confusion. Hearing from someone who had witnessed the events that she had done nothing wrong meant the world to her. Catherine reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. Thank you, Sergeant Morrison, for bringing this to our attention and for looking out for Charlotte's well-being. There's more, Your Highnesses, Morrison continued. After witnessing this incident, I felt compelled to speak with Queen Camilla directly about what had occurred. I know this was highly irregular, but I couldn't stand by and watch a child be treated so unfairly without taking action. William's eyebrows raised in surprise. Confronting a senior royal family member was indeed extraordinary, and could have serious consequences for Morrison's career. What was her response? Initially, she was quite angry that I had questioned her behavior, Morrison admitted. But as our conversation continued, I believe she began to recognize that her treatment of Princess Charlotte was inappropriate. By the end of our discussion, she seemed genuinely regretful about what had happened. Just as Morrison finished speaking, another soft knock came at the door. The same staff member entered to announce that Queen Camilla was requesting permission to speak with the family, specifically asking if she could have a moment with Princess Charlotte. The timing was remarkable, and William looked at his wife and daughter before responding. What do you think, Charlotte? Are you comfortable speaking with Queen Camilla right now? Charlotte considered the question seriously, showing the careful thought process that made her such an impressive young person. I think I would like to hear what she has to say, she replied quietly. But I'd like you and Mummy to be there too. Of course, sweetheart, Catherine assured her. We'll be right here with you. William nodded to the staff member. Please ask Queen Camilla to join us. A few minutes later, Camilla entered the dining room, her usual confident demeanor replaced by something much more humble and uncertain. She looked directly at Charlotte, her expression showing clear remorse. Charlotte, she began, her voice softer than anyone had heard it in quite some time. I owe you a sincere apology for how I treated you this morning. My behavior was completely unacceptable, and you didn't deserve to be spoken to that way. The room was quiet as everyone waited to see how Charlotte would respond. The young princess looked at Camilla thoughtfully, her natural maturity shining through despite her young age. I was excited to share what I had learned about our family's history, Charlotte said simply. I thought it was important to understand how previous queens had served the people. It is important, Camilla replied, taking a step closer. And your enthusiasm for learning about your heritage is exactly what we should be encouraging, not discouraging. I was having a difficult morning, but that's no excuse for taking my frustrations out on you. Camilla paused, seeming to struggle with her next words. I was wrong, Charlotte. Completely and utterly wrong. You approached me with respect and excitement, and I responded with harshness and dismissal. That's not the kind of example I should be setting, and it's not the kind of treatment you deserve. Morrison watched from his position near the door, feeling a sense of satisfaction that his difficult conversation with Camilla had led to this moment. Sometimes, he reflected, protecting the royal family meant more than just standing guard. It meant standing up for what was right. Charlotte listened to Camilla's apology with the same thoughtful attention she gave to everything else in her young life. When Camilla finished speaking, the room fell silent as everyone waited to see how the princess would respond. The moment felt pivotal, not just for the two individuals involved, but for the entire family dynamic. Thank you for apologizing, Charlotte said finally, her voice clear and sincere. I was confused and hurt because I thought I had done something wrong. But I understand that sometimes adults have difficult days too. The grace and maturity in Charlotte's response surprised everyone in the room, including Camilla, who seemed genuinely moved by the young princess's ability to show such understanding, despite having been treated so poorly. "You're very kind to be so forgiving," Camilla said, her voice catching slightly with emotion. "I would very much like to hear your presentation about royal history, if you're still willing to share it. I think I could learn quite a bit from your research." Charlotte's face brightened immediately, the excitement returning to her eyes for the first time since the morning's incident. "Really? You'd like to hear about Queen Victoria and how she served the people?" "Very much," Camilla assured her. "And perhaps next time, instead of interrupting your enthusiasm, I could ask questions and learn alongside you." William and Catherine exchanged glances, both relieved to see their daughter's natural spark returning. They had been prepared to take much stronger action to protect Charlotte, but seeing this genuine resolution unfold felt much better for the entire family. Morrison cleared his throat gently. "Your Royal Highnesses, if I may, I'd like to say that what I've witnessed here tonight gives me great hope for the future of this monarchy. Princess Charlotte's grace under pressure, your strong support as parents, and Queen Camilla's willingness to acknowledge and correct a mistake. These are the qualities that will serve our institution well." Camilla turned to Morrison, her expression now showing respect rather than the anger she had displayed earlier. "Sergeant Morrison, I owe you an apology as well. Your willingness to speak up for Princess Charlotte, despite the potential consequences to your career, showed real courage and integrity. The royal family is fortunate to have someone with your principles in our service." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Morrison replied with a slight bow. "But I was simply doing my duty as I understand it, protecting all members of this family in whatever way they need protection." Over the following days, the atmosphere in the castle noticeably improved. Charlotte and Camilla began having regular conversations about history and royal duties, with the older woman genuinely listening to the young princess's insights and observations. The household staff, who had been deeply troubled by the initial incident, were pleased to see the positive change in dynamics. Mrs. Hayes, the head housekeeper, commented to her colleagues, "It's wonderful to see Princess Charlotte back to her normal, cheerful self. And I have to say, Queen Camilla has been much more pleasant to work with since that difficult morning." Pierre, the chef, was particularly happy when Charlotte returned to the kitchen to continue learning simple recipes. Her enthusiasm for new experiences fully restored. Sometimes, he told his kitchen staff, difficult moments can lead to better understanding between people. Sergeant Morrison continued his duties with the same dedication he had always shown, but he found himself feeling even more proud to serve a family that had demonstrated the ability to acknowledge mistakes, seek forgiveness, and grow from difficult experiences. His fellow guards respected him even more for having the courage to speak up when it mattered most. Several weeks later, Charlotte gave her historical presentation to the entire family during a Sunday afternoon gathering. She spoke confidently about Queen Victoria's reign, drawing parallels between past and present royal duties, and emphasizing the importance of serving the people with humility and dedication. Camilla listened attentively throughout the presentation, asking thoughtful questions and praising Charlotte's thorough research. At the end, she stood and applauded along with the rest of the family. "That was truly educational and inspiring, Charlotte," Camilla said warmly. "You've reminded us all of the important principles that should guide our service to the crown and to the people." Charlotte beamed with pride, not just for the successful presentation, but for the knowledge that her family supported her interests and encouraged her growth. The incident that had started so painfully had ultimately strengthened relationships and reinforced important values within the royal household. As the family dispersed after the presentation, Morrison remained at his post, watching over them all with quiet satisfaction. Sometimes, he reflected, the most important battles weren't fought with weapons or physical force, but with courage, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to protecting those who deserved protection. The young princess who had been hurt and humiliated weeks earlier was now confident and supported, surrounded by family members who had learned valuable lessons about respect, forgiveness, and the true meaning of royal duty.